All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to That's Not Real Truck Watch Party Podcast. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC. Directly below me, the beautiful Short and Sweet. You changed your hair since last week. What happened?
Um, well, it's been about a year since I've done anything with it, and I was getting to the point where I was like, it's looking pretty rough. It needed it needed some work. So I went and I got it colored and cut, and
Awesome. Did
yeah.
you chop any off?
About 4 inches. So yeah, it's about to here.
I
Yep.
see.
Yeah.
All right. See now on the other end of things, like if anytime I do something like that, it's hair removal process.
Mhm.
So like I just when it gets too long and it gets annoying, I just shave it all off and put it in the trash.
If only.
Yeah.
I don't think I can pull off bald very well.
No, you never
No.
know until you try. It worked for Iman
Yeah.
and Patrick Stewart.
True. True.
Okay, so where we left off, we are starting today with Discovery Season 2, Episode 5, Saints of Imperfection. And we're going to look at two episodes after that, so three total today. The one in the middle is one of the short treks. That is Season 1, Episode 3 of the short treks that deals directly with Saru and how he came to be in Starfleet, how he left his home planet. And that's all part of what we're exploring with the story right now, which is we just found out last week that uh, there was this big lie on Saru's home planet of Kaminar, and that is that you got two species. The superior is known as the Ba'ul, and the inferior is the Kelpians. And the Kelpians are supposedly have this death process whereby uh, they I can't even remember what they called it from last week, but when it gets to
Yeah.
that point, they are culled or just outright killed by the Ba'ul, because if they don't, they go insane. So it's supposed to be like the end of their lives, and that's how it's always been on Kaminar. We're going to explore how not only how we find out that's a lie, but what that is going to mean then to all of Saru's people. Now that's not in this next episode. That's in the third episode. So Saints of Imperfection is not going to deal with that directly, but we're going to be continuing on in trying to find some information about the Red Angel and the 7 Points of Light and Spock's story, which will be a little bit furthered. Then the Brightest Star, short trek dealing with 27 years ago when Saru was taken from his or left his planet, Kaminar, and entered Starfleet. And then episode 6 of season 2 Discovery that deals directly with now the ramifications of what Saru is doing with his planet and what it means to his people. So we'll start off with Saints of Imperfection. Here we go. Yeah, you were saying in the chat that you were freezing in that room, apparently.
So cold in here.
It looks more like you're now converting to the Eskimo religion
I think
or
so.
something.
It's much more comfortable.
Anyway, yeah, so that episode, I think, cleared up a lot of the questions that we had outstanding. Not about the Red Angel or the 7 Points or Spock, but everything that was going on with May and Tilly going insane. And I think that that moment that she's Burnham is hugging her at the end and you can clearly see her crying. Tilly has just gone through an extremely traumatic event, starting with getting the shit knocked out of her head by the dark matter meteor, this spore attaching itself to her brain, taking the form of a former dead, now dead uh, colleague or friend, uh, then going through it seemed like extremely painful transition where not only was the organism pumping like a whole bunch of psilocybin or something like that into her system to calm her down, but then like just consumed her and transported her into the mycelium network through the cocoon, and then everything that just happened now in this episode. So, what did you see in like this whole event that Tilly had to go through?
Well, I think, I mean, we definitely saw her step up again when she was inside the network and assert herself against May, who wanted to just out and out kill Hugh. So we saw her kind of, step into like a leadership role there. But yeah, she's got all this psychological damage going on, and now, towards the end she talks about how May and her like have a bond now, and now that bond is broken because assumingly she's never going to see May again.
Yeah. Although we never know, it's Discovery. Anything can happen,
True.
apparently.
The dead
Like
come back.
bringing Dr. Culber back to life.
Right.
Um, Now, I see a couple of potential plot holes with that whole scenario, such as how did Hugh get there in the first place? I mean, they said it was like his energy kind of went into the mycelial network, and then the ja, Jespa or Japas or whatever the hell they are called uh, gave him some kind of material form in there. Then, when he essentially learned that their presence on his skin burns and all that, he would rub the tree bark on him to defend himself. But I mean, does that mean that all people that die somehow pass into the mycelial network? I mean, what? I don't think it was ever made clear what precipitated that event, aside from we want to bring Dr. Culber back into the storyline. Oh, he's
Yeah.
dead. How do we do that? This is like Spock in between movies number 2 and 3, where he just dies and oh yeah, and then we got Planet Genesis to recreate his body, and then we can transfer his mind from Dr. McCoy back into the body.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine.
Just make up some bullshit to bring up some person back to life.
Sure.
Um, so I think they maybe wasn't convoluted, but and they explained it, but is there something else we could do to maybe make it either a little more sane, like he wasn't really dead the whole time, or something along those lines? So that part did bother me a little bit.
Yeah.
Not bothered like you know I hate the series because of it, but just
Well,
obviously they
you
did not clearly
tell.
think it through.
Yeah, you can tell that they didn't plan on doing that because anything that is planned, they plant the little seeds of like, oh, here's that to explain that later on, and there's nothing to explain, you know, nothing to explain him coming back.
Right.
So it was definitely just something they on a whim
And even
decided.
then, like in the episode where I think it was at the end of the last season, Stamets is in the network with evil Stamets, and he's seeing Hugh there, but then he determined that it wasn't actually Hugh he was seeing; it was just like echoes from his own mind that were creating
Mhm.
this apparition. So that those two storylines don't really jive.
Right.
So, um, but I did think, even though I thought it also was a little bit far fetched, the concept of half jumping Discovery into the network and just seeing that whole thing where you got the ship angled down into it, and I thought that was pretty cool and nice execution of what that would potentially look like. Um, and the hull of the ship is apparently a lot more durable than we think it is. Just long enough for us to have, long ass conversations about our feelings.
We're out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time. Okay, we're on our way, but
Five
90
more
more
minutes.
seconds about pinky swears.
It's like me and the snooze in the morning, like,
Yeah,
9 minutes.
we'll get there eventually. So, um, now, do you have any thoughts in particular on Giorgio being like Ash Tyler now in this position where they are working for Section 31, which I think it was mentioned more than once that we're essentially now considering this the Black Ops division of Starfleet. And yes, it's intelligence, but it's more than that. There's covert operations. There's obviously for the first. I can't remember how many times it was described in Next Generation that the Federation was never allowed to have cloaking technology because of the Khitomer Accords. Like the Klingons have had it all along, but because of the Khitomer Accords, which comes after this point,
Yeah.
the Federation doesn't have any cloaking technology, and yet here we are. Section 31 definitely has it, and more
Right.
more than that. It's not even just the cloaking technology. It's manipulating the appearance of a starship to be a meteoroid or something along those lines.
Mhm.
Now you haven't seen uh, Star Trek Enterprise yet,
Correct.
and
Right.
there's 2 episodes that in that deal with that. But we're also talking about 100 years prior to this, what we're looking at now.
Hmm.
When the humans were just starting to go into deep space, and even then they didn't really have cloaking technology, although we kind of mess around with that. But I just found it real interesting that apparently Section 31 has had cloaking technology for quite some time now, enough to really build it into this ship that Leland is commanding
Yeah.
and do what he wants to do with it.
Right. Well, and they have an easy out because they can just say, "Oh, it's classified. Oh, it's classified.
Yeah,
I can't tell you anything about
it's
it."
very secretive.
They walk the line and everything's classified, and that's all you're gonna
Right.
know.
So, what were your thoughts basically on Captain Giorgio and Ash Tyler now with their new roles with Section 31, and how, in specific, how Giorgio and Burnham are now interacting?
I mean, I think it's smart of Starfleet to do that. She's obviously got um, the intelligence and the war mentality that something like Section 31 is going to need. And
Yeah,
Ash Tyler is kind of like a misplaced, he's probably going to serve his best role in Section 31. And Michael, you can tell there's always going to be some distrust there and tension there. So I think it was kind of a smart way to keep them as actors in the show and keep kind of like a consistent tense tension between the two characters there.
yeah, and I think that's one thing that they have not been afraid to do with Discovery that's been different from all of the other series that came before it, is this kind of like it is convoluted in a way where you look at the like storyline of Ash Tyler and you go, okay, first he was the Klingon torchbearer, then he was an outcast, then now he's a human refugee or war hero. Um,
Mhm.
then he goes on to murder one of the main characters, and then goes to help save the Klingon Empire, and now he's back as a Starfleet Black Ops officer. You can't get more convoluted than that in 2 seasons. The path
Right.
that a character like that has taken, you know.
Well, and of course they bring him in for the episode where Hugh potentially is coming back, the
Right.
guy that he killed very
Yeah,
conveniently.
very conveniently. You caught on to that, huh?
Mm.
And him standing on the bridge to hear the name,
Yeah.
um, so we can get a nice good reaction shot of him. Oh my god. Oh, and believe me, that's going to come into play here in a little bit here too, because now that Hugh is back, there's got to be this standoff between the two.
Sure.
So, uh, obviously that played into the decision with Ash Tyler being named the liaison officer who's going to continue on Discovery instead of Captain Georgiou, just
Not
so we
George.
can see that nice little package.
Anyone but Georgiou.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right. Any other thoughts on that episode before we move on?
No, I don't think so. I mean, pretty much, I thought it was pretty enjoyable, even with all the
I like
little.
episodes that answer outstanding questions.
Oh, for sure.
Like, glad we wrapped up at least that whole part of the storyline, and now they're going to continue on with the Red Angel stuff. But uh,
Mhm.
that was nice, seeing a resolution come to everything that Tilly was experiencing, and now she can move on, or at least start to move on with her. So
Right.
okay, so now we've got the short trek, season one, episode three, "The Brightest Star." This takes place 27 years ago. So far, we've been operating in the year 2257. So just a little bit of like timekeeping notes on that. Discovery started last year in 2256. Now we're in 2257. And so this takes place in 2230, and it is Saru basically meeting Captain Georgiou. We'll take a look at that, and then we'll come back for the next Discovery episode. All right. So, yet another episode where we actually answer some questions and solve some issues.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so basically, we just determined that Saru has basically revealed the entire lie, but he didn't do it himself per se, and allowed the rest of the Kelpians to figure out what the hell is going on. Um, it seems like everything that has occurred, at least in this episode, is at the behest of the Red Angel. Red Angel appeared as a signal, or caused a signal, so that they would go to Kaminar and kind of force this confrontation between Saru and the Ba'ul, and then the Red Angel resolved it by stopping the Ba'ul from committing genocide. So, what were your thoughts on like how that all played out?
Well, something that I kind of stuck out to me was they talked about the tachyon, uh I don't know, the tachyon rays or pulses, or and they mentioned time travel. So kind of starting to think that this Red Angel is maybe something from the future that is coming back to these critical points in history where species are, coming to like an evolutionary stage
Right.
and maybe affecting that somehow. That's just a hypothesis that I am like, you know, got spinning around in my head with this whole Red Angel thing.
Right. So yeah, they were mentioning tachyons, which is a sign of time travel, or they also said it could be transporter activity, or I can't remember what the third thing was. Um, and so far we've had, if I recall correctly, had four appearances. The first was, um, or let's see, yeah, I'm probably not going to do this in order, and I may not remember all of them. So we've got the going to. Oh, I'm going brain dead here. Help me out. What were the appearances?
The planet where they transported everybody off of,
Oh yeah, the asteroid.
yeah, off of the
They say,
asteroid.
they saved the one starship crew that included the engineer.
Mm-hmm. Reno.
Yeah. And we also had the planet where there was this large group of humans that were taken from out of. So that would support the time travel theory, because the
Mm-hmm.
Red Angel apparently took this group of humans from Earth at the beginning of World or sometime in World War III, transplanted them to this planet, and I think it was the Beta Quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
And the time at which they did that was like the same time. So we're talking about like 100 plus years, I think it was. And now they've got their own society on that other planet, and many more people generations down the line, and yet they have to show up then at that planet, which, having the asteroid in the shuttle bay of Discovery causes an imbalance that makes the planet now in peril. So just their presence there makes the planet in peril, and then they find a way to save them. So each of these, it seems like it's almost a contradiction, some kind of a time paradox where their mere presence there causes an issue and then it's resolved.
Right.
Um, and moving forward, now we supposedly have a much clearer idea of what the Red Angel is. It's a humanoid that's in some type of biomechanical suit with technology far beyond what the Federation possesses, such as the ability to create a gigantic electromagnetic wave that renders all of the Baul's towers powerless. So, is there anything that you see in that whole scenario of resolving the mystery?
Not yet. I'm not sure what direction they're going to go
Yeah,
with it. I'm kind of starting to maybe see something, but I don't know how it's tying into the one that's weird is Spock seeing the Red Angel as a child. And
right,
that's kind of like a totally different situation, so it kind of doesn't add up just yet.
right. And Starfleet still has no idea what this is.
Hmm.
No clue whatsoever. Spock maybe has an idea, but they can't find him. Like Starfleet's best can't find him. So yeah, the mystery
Maybe
continues.
maybe Spock is the angel.
Maybe. One thing's for sure: if they find Spock, they're definitely going to be able to maybe find some answers to all of this and figure out what the hell is going on.
I would imagine he's
Yeah.
pretty far ahead of it.
Um, what did you think of the whole scenario with Saru confronting Pike on the bridge and
Oh, I thought that was
getting mouthy?
cool. Yeah, I was like, I kind of expected him to just go off the rails a little bit now that he has no fear.
Right.
And, Pike kind of expected it. And he's like, don't, maybe you should just be quiet during this.
Put your balls back in your underwear for a
Right.
second. And,
But he's like, no, no, no. I do what I want.
well, and he did. He basically committed mutiny,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. But I mean, it's that the Star Trek is replete with that. Officers disobeying an order when they think they know better, whether they actually produce a good result or not.
I mean,
Um,
he did get off the bridge when he said get off the bridge.
yeah, that's true. And then the turbo lift is like, he wants to go to the transporter room. Let's go.
Yeah,
You
sure. Like, get out.
know. Yeah, Saru. I mean, I'm the, the thing that really sticks out to me about this transformation that Saru is having is he went from his entire life being ruled by and dictated by fear response, and now that's just gone. So what takes its place? And I think what they were really trying to insinuate with this episode is that past Vihari, that the Kelpians are capable of incredible acts of violence and danger and strength. I mean, you saw how he just basically became Superman and did the landing and all that. um, so it's clear that the Baul definitely have a vested interest in maintaining control over that so that they don't get wiped out at the very least. They just want to
Right.
keep the upper hand in that. At the
Mhm.
same time, um, if the Kelpians are capable of that, what is holding them back from just becoming exactly what the Baul are? Vicious and
True.
anything. I mean, a Spider-Man. Great power comes great responsibility. Uh, if if you've got an entire society of Kelpians, and that's why I said it's far more dangerous. So we're not just starting a war; we're forcing an entire species through an evolutionary act that changes completely everything about their society in about 2 minutes, and nobody's thinking twice about this. um, and into this form post Vihari that we don't know if they're even going to be able to control themselves, if they're going to turn into vicious animals or something like that. And I think that
Um,
all what they were really insinuating with that bit between Saru and Pike on the bridge is that yes, they are most definitely capable of that, and the only thing that keeps Saru in check is his Starfleet principles. You know, um, seems to me that there definitely needs to be some kind of other storyline addition at some point to say, and maybe this has been addressed because I have not read or even researched any of the novels that have come out in the last couple of years regarding Discovery. I know there's already several of them. So maybe in another format, but I we never see the Kelpians again because they just introduced them as this new species for this show. What are they doing in the universe? What
right.
happens to them? What happens to the Baul after this? And at least as far as I've seen, granting that I haven't seen all of this new stuff, they haven't answered that yet. But it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb that is something that needs an answer, I think.
Definitely.
How exactly
I kind of think they'll come back around to it.
how exactly do the Kelpians handle this transition,
Right.
so to speak. So, all right. Anything else before we wrap up?
Oh, I did note that I think it's interesting that like Culber, his personality shift kind of
I forgot about that.
it's like he clearly has PTSD. He almost seems like he kind of feels like a stranger in his own body. So I think that'll be kind of neat to see how they progress with that because you know he's probably got PTSD. Tilly probably has PTSD. Uh, maybe
Now,
Tyler
now, now,
clearly has some PTSD.
now Saru's got it. And
Now Saru, they're just all different causes, but
going to change the name
all
of the
gonna be
ship to
going
the
through it.
USS PSTCD.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I I forgot about that, and I'm glad you mentioned it. The thing that stuck with me is that Dr. Pollard said to him that she thinks he's ready to start resuming his normal, quote unquote, normal life. As a doctor on a starship, one of the things that I think would be foremost is mental health. And if you and I can see PTSD with him, then what the fuck is she doing? Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. I mean, your body is
Ah, yeah,
perfect. You're
you're fine.
perfectly normal. Get out of my sick bay, you know.
You're fine. Go to work.
Yeah. Um. So obviously he's having, and this is going to come into play in future episodes, especially uh the. I don't think I'm ruining anything by saying the confrontation between uh Culber and Ash Tyler that is coming. Um,
Yeah.
but also the relationship that Culber has with Stamets. That's also
Mm-hmm.
going to meet a wall, so to speak, and have to try to overcome it as well because he clearly is not. He's clearly not in the same frame of mind as he was before.
No.
And I think well, they have to spend some time figuring out what that is. So, yeah, maybe Dr. Pollard is on the same level as Dr. Pulaski and just is a piece of shit that should have never been there in the first place. But who knows? Anyway, all right. So that just about wraps it up. Um, now, we've only done about half of the short treks as I've been intersplicing them with the material it's most relevant with. Um, and next week, we're going to do that with something other than the short treks. The rest of them are coming up because they are far more related to uh, the second era of Star Trek that we're going to be considering because we're doing Discovery and um, Strange New Worlds, which all takes place pre Captain Kirk. In fact, in the 10 years just before Captain Kirk.
Mm.
Then we're going to jump to the 10 years after Star Trek Nemesis. So the post TNG, post Picard era, as we pick up with Star Trek um, Prodigy, Lower Decks, which is the comedy. Basically, it's considered canonish. Takes place at the same time. Um, and then Picard itself, and anything else that's relevant in that era. So before we make that trip, we have to wrap up a lot of the things that are occurring in this era. Primarily now that Captain Lorca's gone with Captain Pike, and obviously that's the main focus of Strange New Worlds. Now, after we've spent some time getting to know some of the other minor crew members, we're going to get to know quite a bit more about the relationship between Burnham and Spock, more so than we've already done, and Sarek and Amanda and that whole saga, and then Captain Pike himself. So next week, here's what we're going to do is the next episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 7, called Lights and Shadows. That's going to focus on Spock and family. And then, before we continue on with Discovery, we're going to go back to the beginning and watch the very first episode of Star Trek that was ever created, The Cage, back in 1966, the pilot to the original series, because it is extremely relevant to what comes after that and this entire story arc of the Red Angel. So next week we'll watch Lights and Shadows and then the original series episode The Cage. Just so we have that fresh in our minds as we continue on with all these loose ends they're trying to tie up here.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a few years since I've seen that, so it's definitely fuzzy.
yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you what, it really sheds a lot of light on who Captain Pike is as a person. Because we haven't seen a lot of that. I mean, in the original series, you only have them in what, 3 episodes. And one of them didn't actually air. The Cage never actually aired. It did come back in the 2-part episode where they were reviewing it, basically, and um, dealing with all of that and what happened on the planet of Talos. And that's all we ever had. There was a little bit more of a glimpse in the J.J. Abrams movies where they explored Captain Pike when Kirk was still in as a cadet and what he was like with that. Okay, so we get some of the impressions, but now with Ansel Mount playing Captain Pike, not only his appearances here in Discovery, but now being the captain of the Enterprise in the entire series now, Strange New Worlds, we're going to get much more close in contact and see what his personality and what drives him as a person and some of the severe emotional crises that he has run into in his lifetime and his captaincy and how that affects his personality and how, his decision making process and all that. So that's what we will do next week, and we'll continue on. That will be episode 12 out of 1200, and we just keep plugging along. So, alrighty.
Ongoing.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good night.
Adios.